Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we are back in War Thunder and we're having a look at the answers to the Russian questions from the Q&A yesterday, and the Q&A of course done by Kirill Yudintsev, who is the CCO of Gaijin Entertainment. It was a good Q&A actually, the Russian one and also the English one. I was a little bit let down by the questions which were asked, but that isn't Gaijin's fault, that is unfortunately the fault of the general community. A lot of the questions were questions which had either been answered before or had very simple answers to if you just, thought about it a little bit more. The idea of server populations, the idea of tick rates, the idea of why is this reward higher than the other? Why do my guns not work? There was just a lot of questions where it's like, why are these being asked? And the other thing is, why are these being upvoted? If you want to see that video yesterday, it is on the channel. It's in the form of the video that you can see there. It's about, an hour and a bit long. I'd definitely say it's worth a watch because a lot of the stuff is nice to get answers to, but at the same time, it is kind of frustrating with some of the questions that were asked. On top of this as well, a lot of people have been talking about where do I find the VODs for this. A lot of people talk about censorship, that they don't have it on the YouTube channel, and that's okay, I suppose, if you want to put it like that, but they are publicly available if you just want the raw VODs. All you have to do is go to the War Thunder homepage when it comes to Twitch. So this one right here, this is the English version. You just go to the videos section, so you just click here, and it's right here. So you can see this is the English Q&A they did, and for the Russian one, you do exactly the same thing. You just go to warthunder_RU, and then you go to their videos, and it's right here. So this idea that they're censoring content because they're privatizing it on the YouTube side of things, it's publicly available right now, as I'm recording this the next day. And they're always publicly available. You can see here that this is the sneak peek stream right here. They keep them all on Twitch, right? They're all here. You can see them all. So just make sure, instead of losing your mind over the idea that they're censoring stuff. No, I don't know why they private stuff on YouTube. I personally wouldn't. But at the same time, they are available because they do this restreaming thing or co-streaming thing on Twitch and YouTube. So yeah, check them out if you want to. And also if you want to see my stream from yesterday, it is obviously on the YouTube channel. Let's get into these questions here. Oh, also, before we get started, so slight kind of TLDW of the English stream. As I said, I think most of the answers were pretty good. There was only two which I wasn't happy with. The first one, they talked about the events, so basically stuff like Battlefield Engineer, Operation Shipyard, the Build-A-Bear events, and Kirill basically said that these events should be seen as optional, and therefore, they can basically make it as hard as they want. The problem with this is that the Battlefield Engineer event, you can say, they also threw in, they're basically there for the players who play all the time. And the Battlefield Engineer event, it was impossible for a person to play 24/7 and actually complete that event. I proved this through the videos that I made. I proved this through, the content that was created. It was impossible to do. Now, whether that was because of a coding issue, whether that was deliberate, whether that was not deliberate, whatever happens, you were forced to use the market, and once people figured that out, they started scalping people. So don't give me this, you can just play and you'll get the stuff, because that wasn't the case for that. Operation Shipyard, it was. You could just play, 24/7 and be able to complete it, so at least that was better. But the problem with the argument, well, it is optional, it can be applied to everything. It's a bad argument. What's also optional? Playing War Thunder. That's an optional, enjoyment for a lot of people. It's an optional hobby that they could just pick to not play. You see what I mean? So there needs to be stronger arguments there instead of just saying they're optional, because it doesn't mean anything. It's not a good argument because it can be applied to everything. The other side of stuff as well is when it came to the repair cost stuff. Basically, it was kind of weird because, first of all, Kirill said that repair costs were not to do with balancing. But then, after about 5 seconds, he actually kind of said, well, what do you mean by balancing? I feel like he got a little bit confused there when it came to what he was actually talking about. And since he is a Russian his English is not his first language, I think we should give him a little bit of a benefit of the doubt when it comes to these things. For me personally, to get a Q&A like this is wonderful. It is something that is, incredibly precious when it comes to trying to get some answers about not really where the game is going, but the general philosophy behind certain things when it comes to the game. So for me, I'm happy about that. So the other thing is wordplay. So there's one interesting thing that happens quite a lot, and they did it in this stream, and it's talking about premium vehicles. So a few questions came up about top-tier premium vehicles, and the interesting thing is there are two ways to look at it, right? So there is one way to look at it if you want to be away from the situation and don't want to talk about it, which is the one that Gaijin takes, and then there's the actual situation, right? So the argumentation used is these are not top-tier vehicles because they're not the highest rank in the game. So what that means is stuff like the HMS Belfast or the USS Helena, these are rank 4 vehicles, and the highest rank in naval is rank 5. Right? So therefore, it is completely fine that these are brought into the game because they're not the highest rank. But if you look at it from the other side, the side that actually matters, the BR side, which is the only thing taken into account when it comes to matchmaking, ranks have nothing to do with matchmaking. The only thing that ranks are there for is for research purposes, working out how many vehicles you need per rank to be able to get to the next one. So when we talk about the actual usefulness of premiums, you should never see them in terms of, when we're talking about top tier stuff, if you're looking at them in terms of rank, that's not the best way to look at them if you're looking at it from a matchmaking point of view, which a lot of people are. Because with the Belfast, with the Helena, they are the top BR vehicles in the game right now when it comes to naval. Right? The helicopters as well. Stuff like the Eurocopter Tiger, stuff like the Ka-50, they're very high up there. The same with stuff like the Hunter, which was added as well, the FJ9. All of these are very high BR vehicles. But to obfuscate the point, Gaijin every time can just go, well, they're not the highest rank. That is not the question being asked. And if that is the question being asked, then the question needs to change from why, do you have these high-ranked vehicles to why have you decided that the top BR in the game has to be, has to have these premium vehicles in it, right? And even if you want to take the first argument, so this was actually pointed out by Nito the other day, if you want to take the argument of we don't have the highest ranked vehicle premiums in the game, there was a time where that was the case. And that was with the OpenShip beta, when they decided to add in these premium destroyers. 4.3 rank 3 machines. They were the highest rank, they were the highest BR premiums in the game. And as I've said many times, I disagree with those destroyers being premiums. They are pay-to-win machines. They are just better than their Tech Tree counterparts at the same BR. So if you really want to focus on an example which would nail Gaijin, it's that one, right? It nails them on every front. They were the highest rank, they were the highest BR, and they were better than their Tech Tree equivalents. But for some reason, we're not focusing on that, and we should be, instead of looking at stuff like the Ka-50. And I understand it's because of, population differences, mainly the fact that more people play stuff like ground forces than naval, but that is the concrete example of the problem which we are seeing. Anyway, let's get into the Russian side of things after giving my thoughts about the English. I would like to thank two people. The first one is Cate. Thank you to Cate for translating this for us. Cate is a moderator on the Tech Hub Discord. He is an incredibly nice person to talk to and is always very vocal. Another thing as well is because he's an incredibly multilingual person, I believe he at least speaks up to 3 separate languages and probably probably even more, which is just highly impressive from somebody his age. So I want to thank him for putting this together for us. And also, on the other side of things as well, the other thing is thank you to Leroy Dankbeams, who made the wonderful thumbnail yesterday. It was truly amazing to see an artist at work, I think is the way to go at it. So, you know how I talked about there were some unfortunate questions in the English side? Well, in the Russian side, it's no different. There's a few of them which are all over the place, but at least the answers are a little interesting. So the first question is, why do I lose a game when I activate a 300-500% booster? This is what is known as confirmation bias. The answer is, it's not possible to queue up people that will allow you to perform well. This would mean you would have to find people that will fit your current BR and your own performance in-game. Even if we tried, it would be impossible. This would cause long queue times ranging from 10k to 20k players. So pretty much what they're talking about is they can't... they've taken a bad question and they've actually given an answer to an even better question. So they're talking about the implementation of an elo system which is actually available when it comes to the side of things for the esports side. But if you try to put that on the general player base, what would end up happening is there just aren't enough people playing the game to fill out each elo bracket, as it would be known. So therefore, instead what you have is a random matchmaker in War Thunder, which only takes into account a few things. So BR of your vehicle, if you're in a squad or not, and how big that squad is. And it also takes into account now the map stuff, because of the map rotation filter, and also what type of maps you can play at what BR, but overall, that is what it looks at from the individual player. Then you've got other stuff like quantitative matchmaking, and so on and so forth. So, what is being said makes complete sense. Like, why do you lose a game when you activate a booster? Maybe you're playing badly. Because the performance aspect is on you and is on your team members. So if you want to activate a booster and have the best chance, get 2 or 3 players with you who are incredibly good, and hope that they carry you while you help them out as well. Because matchmaking is completely random. There is no hidden bit of code which is like, no, you've activated a booster now. Looks like you're gonna get upted. That's just not how it works. The next one is, how do you manage to get all models working for each vehicle type and game mode? It's their job. Anyway, the answer is we have several sections that work on the models, like historians that collect information, and designers and coders that try to get models as correct as possible visually and performance-wise. For each vehicles, we have to make a whole new model. The entire code structure is different. That applies to both AB and RB. So yeah. Makes sense, each vehicle is independent, apart from when they bring in certain vehicles which have copied FMs from other vehicles, but it's used as kind of a starting point and then it gets built upon. So that was something, I believe that the Phantom, when it came to Britain, it first initially had a copied FM from the American one, but before it hit live servers, they implemented its new engines and so on and so forth, so meaning that it was different. One thing that this question does remind me of, though, is that the English stream, somebody asked them about how do they get information for classified vehicles, and they just dodged the question completely, because the answer is they can't. It's kind of as simple as that, so they kind of have to guesstimate. But if you say that, people are going to get a little bit annoyed, or I don't think they should. I think people should realize how classifications work, and top tier is not exactly reality. The next question is, why are flight models very arcadey? I'm guessing this is comparing it to stuff like DCS and also IL-2. Depends what you compare it to. We have some aircraft that some other games don't even have. It's almost impossible to find the most accurate performance of a plane that you never saw actually flying. I mean, that's very true, which is why it's best to go on test flight statistics. We do have people that go out into the field and see how the aircraft flies and collect avionic information that helps us get a certain vehicle more accurate. I've actually talked to a few, or at least talked to 2 individuals who have done like this on-the-ground research. So one of them is heavily involved in ground when it comes to the American side of things, and the other one is aviation for the British side of things. And it's really interesting to talk to them about how they actually collect the data and stuff, and also great sources of information to find out what's going to come soon. If you can find out if somebody is going to a specific museum, let's say, and you know what are the main exhibits of that museum, you can kind of make a few guesses about what's coming in the future. So that's always something to follow. The next one is Mac optimization. And then Mac is a very complex system that is not made for gaming. Truth. It's very difficult to work on it, even if there is a special support like Vulkan. The addition of NVGs and thermals had to do some reverse engineering, so the game would not break and work on Mac. Holy hell, that sounds like an absolute nightmare. But yeah, it is true that Mac definitely is designed much more for other forms of work, I suppose you'd call it, and it's very good at those. You know, Mac is very good for stuff like general media things, so, you know, actually video editing, setting up music, doing all those things, but gaming, it definitely is not optimized for. So if you're looking to play, you know, War Thunder, you can pick up a decent PC for like half the price of any decent Mac. So it may be worth thinking about if that is something that you want to do. The next question is, when will the nerfing and buffing period end? I've no, like, it's never going to end. Never going to end. Because it's, right, so if you talk, so there's two ways to look at this, right? I'll read out the answer first. So the answer is, it depends on the vehicle performance and its correction. So that is the first part. The second part, we sometimes have difficult situations when we make mistakes that cause vehicles to perform very differently compared to their real-life performance. And this caused the issue whether the vehicle should get nerfed or buffed. In some cases, there is no way to remove the aspect of buffing and nerfing. So I'm guessing they're talking about actual, I don't know, armor or, you know, maybe ammunition. I'm not exactly sure what they're referring to that they're not able to remove. That's kind of odd. But the first, so there's two ways of looking at this. The first part is when will they get all of the vehicle performances correct? They can get them as close as possible to the majority of vehicles. When it comes to top tier vehicles, you're probably going to have to wait about 30 to 50 years when stuff becomes unclassified, if it ever does. We still have a lot of stuff from the 60s when it comes to especially Chobham armor, which is still classified, you know, and that is what's that, 60 years ago at this point? So yeah, it's a lot of countries, like Sweden is a great example. So we're having the Swedish aviation tree coming in at Christmas, and also the talk of Swedish naval and ground, which is going to come in later on, and helicopters probably in the next year. One of the problems with Sweden is, and also why when it came to the Swedish tests, one of the biggest issues with using it as a source is the Swedish have a rule in their law which states that nothing when it comes to military testing or military advancement is to be released within 50 years of its being, you know, of it being either tested or of it being used. So that means the last 50 years of anything in Sweden is classified, unless a court overrules the classification and allows it to be available to the public. Now, this is why when you look at the Swedish tests, the Swedish trials, which were done in the 90s, especially the ground vehicle ones, these, when people point to them as good sources, first of all, it's done by one individual, one person, and which is, you know, if you want to put all of your eggs in one basket on one person, you go ahead. And the other one is what I just brought up, the fact that Sweden classifies all their information for 50 years after it is put out. And these are the problems that Gaijin run into when it comes to classifications, meaning that they're never going to get certain vehicles' performances ever correct because, you know, it will never end until, I mean, if War Thunder's around in maybe 40 or 50 years, which would be incredibly surprising, then maybe, you know, maybe stuff will happen, but I highly doubt it. If we're talking about nerfing and buffing when it comes to BRs, Well, that's all based around how players are performing, so that will never end. There will always be BR changes, there will always be cost changes because they're done mainly by algorithms and also looking at general data from the average player. Whether you agree with that or not is obviously a different discussion. The next question is, please remove the azimuth bar on the top of the GUI. The answer is, we will add this feature. This is already not released yet. I'm not exactly sure what the azimuth bar is, but okay, so you're going to be able to release it. Well, sorry, you're going to be able to remove it, whatever that is. The next one is, how does the RPU work? A matchmaking theory which incorporates a lot of parameters, such as penetration of shells and whether it will penetrate or armor values and their potential shell resistance. The answer is, there is no such thing that incorporates vehicle armor, shell characteristics, player performance, win rate, KD, activated boosters. As said earlier, it is near impossible to add this. It's too many parameters that will cause more issues. Yeah, the problem is the more parameters you put into matchmaking, the longer the queue times you make. It's kind of as simple as that. Unless the parameters are useless, therefore what is the point in putting them in the first place? So for me, I'm completely fine how the matchmaking is. I definitely would like an expansion of the quantitative matchmaking idea, which is what we've seen, over the last half a year or so. It was implemented ages ago, and then it disappeared again, and now it's back again. So I'm happy it's back. Basically, quantitative matchmaking means that no matter what match you're in, there can only be a maximum of 4 vehicles which are at the maximum BR of that battle. So let's say you are at 7-7 and you get up-tiered into an 8-7 game, there can only be maximum 4 8-7s on the enemy team and 4 8-7s on your team. For me personally, this is good. This limiting amount of vehicles by BR, it doesn't solve the whole problem, because obviously you have certain vehicles which are better at the same BR than others, but it does make it better. When it comes to trying to put in all of these different ideas, you're just going to end up with an absolute cluster, and it probably won't even help. The next question is, what will you do when people ask you to do something? That's interesting. I mean, it's an oddly phrased question, but it's a very valid one, right? Because it's like, how do you respond to community engagement is pretty much the question. The answer is, we know that people ask for different things, mainly it being their own individual issues they face and they want them fixed. We do digest all information from different media sources. We also have internal digestion, where we go into depth on specific parts, and this is something I've been bashing on about for a few years. One of the problems that Gaijin faces, and one that the idea of the community faces, is that not everyone agrees on everything. You have small areas of the community which heavily believe in one set of things, and then you have other areas which believe the complete opposite. It's incredibly hard to actually work out what the community wants. That's why I don't really like using the phrase "the community," because it lumps everybody under one banner and makes people believe that there is this big large force which is behind an idea. And there hasn't been many times in War Thunder's history where that has really been the case. One of them was obviously the parts and FPE thing, which made sense. The other one was getting rid of the premium modifications thing, which I'm incredibly happy that never came back. But when it came to other ideas as well, there was, a decent amount of support and a decent amount of disagreement. But the overall problem is when you use phrases like "the community believes this," that's never going to be the case on 99.9% of the issues, right? You can tell when there has been an issue with the community because Gaijin have officially addressed it publicly, right? When it's been a large issue. But when it's been these minor issues and people say, why aren't Gaijin listening to me? It's because you and only a few others are talking about them. This isn't a large-scale issue that a lot of people face. Like when you look at new content, when you look at the M1A2, for an example, right? A lot of people talking about its armor being wrong. First of all, it's classified. Second of all, I know you're talking about the DU inserts, but it's still, once again, I talked about this in update 1.77, right? Advancing Storm. when the M1 Abrams was added. This is the stuff you're going to have to deal with going forward at Top Tier and War Thunder. Because what was put together in that update showed that they were going into guesstimation territory. So everybody complaining about the M1A2, good luck. It ain't going to matter. Because Gaijin can just turn around and go, we've interpreted the information, and we've decided that, we disagree. And there's nothing you can do about it because it's classified. So have fun with that. This is why for, a year and a half at this point, I've been saying it was a bad idea to do all that stuff. But anyway, yeah, it's very hard from even my point of view, where I look at the people who interact on the Discord when it comes to text and voice, the people who interact on the channel. I can do polls and stuff, and polls will give me a general idea of what people who watch my content believe in, and also people on the Discord. I can talk to a bunch of people. I can go and look on stuff like VK for the Russian side of things, or the War Thunder forums for the English or the Russian side of things, the European points of view. I can look on the Reddit for a mainly American and European point of view, but at the same time, it's really hard. It's really hard to bring everything together and actually get some solid points out of it. There's a reason why the War Thunder Player Council got absolutely nowhere, and it's the same reason as here. Too many ideas pinging and ponging around, and it's just impossible to work out what people actually want, which is why I'm much more in favor of Gaijin just doing what they want to, and then if there is a serious issue, like the premium modification stuff, that is the time where it's good to come together, instead of nebulous stuff like fix the game. I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, Jay Wilt, John Ryman, Joseph Anders, Martinez, Moxie, Super Cacti, Uyins Terry, Elove Goat, and Seductive Trashcan for supporting the channel.